Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. So I'm just going to be going over my balisong collection and talking about each knife and what I like about it. So yeah, let's get into that. So starting off, I'll talk about my trainer. This is a Sphinx Zephyr, and this was the one from his very first run. You can see I got the blade marked number 9. And this one, I like this one a lot because of how much you can beat on it. Because normally a lot of these trainers will use the 6061 aluminum alloy and just a normal untreated blade, whereas this one has the 775 aluminum with a heat treated 440 steel blade. And you can see, I mean, I've had this knife since it came out, which was a few years ago, and I use my stuff and it's held up really well. So you can see it's got some play in the handles. This is only washer driven, but I think his newer ones are bushing driven. And I'll give you a little sound test here. So you can see it's pretty loud. It clanks a lot and you've got that blade tap, but for a trainer, for the price, I think this is like 120 bucks when it first came out. It's a very good option. So really like that as my trainer. So up next, we've got probably my most special piece. This is a VG10 Spyderco Spiderfly. Now these were the earliest run of the Spiderflies and definitely the most rare. Now, the Spiderfly's got a pretty interesting story behind it because Spyderco got in trouble for importing balisong parts for these knives, and they were actually recalled. And you were supposed to mail these back to Spyderco for a store credit refund. And Americans being Americans, obviously everyone complied with the order and they were all sent back to Spyderco to be disposed of properly. And that's why you will never see these anywhere. Obviously, I'm joking because I've got one right here. And this one is pretty awkward to flip because these handles are big, bulky channel steel, pretty heavy, but they're actually pretty thin up top. So it is possible to flip, but it's definitely not my favorite flipper. And you got your spring latch and your pocket clip, but doesn't really make a whole lot of noise. And I'll show you. It's got pretty good handle play, and this one also runs on bushings. So it's a very nice knife, just the ergonomics for flipping aren't the best. So up next, I've got my Brady Chimera. These were the go-to starting knives right before I was getting into the hobby. So when I got in, most of these were already discontinued and they were pretty hard to find. And I didn't get this one until like way later. But I got a pretty good price for it. I think I paid 80 bucks for it. And I mean, you can see the blade is pretty worn, but the handles are in pretty good condition. Now, these are stainless steel handles. I'm not sure what the blade steel is, but I think it's some sort of stainless steel. And the pivots are only bronze phosphorus washers, which do a pretty good job on this knife. You can see there's not a whole lot of blade play, and pretty minimal, if any, handle tap. And you can hear the sound. You get that little ring to it with the steel handles. So, all in all, really like this knife. Definitely worth it if you can find one for around the $100 mark. So up next, this was actually my first knife. This is a US knife maker, Dogbite 3.1 in LMAX, which is really cool. I'm a big fan of LMAX steel. And this one was modded by Hammer Designs, which is why you see it's got that little orange peel finish on the handles, and it's actually got a reground blade into that little bowie. The normal ones aren't like that, so this is definitely a truly custom piece, because I haven't seen any other of the Dogbites done up like this. I've seen them anodized, but not reground like that, so I do really like this knife. So this one is the first knife here that's got the titanium handles. These are the 6AL4V titanium. You can see they got it to anodized green. And this one runs on the bushing system, which are really tight. You can see there's barely any movement there. And absolutely no blade tap. And this one, the bushings are actually done so well that when you're tuning it, you can basically just tighten the screws down as much as you want, and you'll still get your free floating handles. So give you a little sound test. Very click-clacky. Not really a whole lot going on with the sound, but doesn't sound bad. So definitely one of my favorite knives in the collection. So next we've got this Maxace Covenant. But this one's a bit special because this is the V1 Covenant, which was the early version. And you can tell that because this one has the dark blue anodization, which wasn't available on the V2. But the main thing is with the blade, you can see that with the Zen pins, the pinch here is pretty narrow and the cups here are pretty short, which the V2 has just, that stuff is just extended a little bit. And the other thing is the spacers on the V2 are a lot longer than these ones. Now, this is my favorite knife to carry because you get a pocket clip here, but they also give you two sets of spacers. You have brass ones, which are heavier, and a titanium one, which is lighter. So you can use that to balance out that pocket clip a little bit, which helps keep it a little bit more neutral when you're flipping it, which is a pretty cool detail that I wish you'd see a little bit more of. Now the other thing is, this is an M390 blade, which is one of my favorite steels. I've got a bunch of knives in M390. Just love this stuff. And this is also, well, I guess this is the first knife we've got that has the Zen pins, which you can see instead of having the pins on the tang of the blade, you've got them built into the handles to pinch on the little tang of the blade. And those are a bit more durable because you're not beating on the actual pins on the blade. But with a quality knife with your tang pins, you're going to have a hard time beating those out. But I know plenty of people do. Whereas on these Zen pins, you can see they're removable, so if you beat your Zen pins, they're pretty easy to just take those out and put a new set in, because Max Ace does send you extra hardware. So this is a little sound test for y'all. Doesn't really sound like a whole lot. This one runs on ceramic ball bearings, and you can see they do a pretty good job. No blade tap, very little blade play. Although with the bearings you do have more flex if you put force on them, but not really. The bearings are pretty good on that one. So up next, I've got my Midnight Cat Studio Petrol, or Max Ace Petrol. I'm not quite sure what the deal with Midnight Cat Studio and Max Ace is, but either way, this knife is pretty nice. They did a few versions of this. This is the one with the channel steel handles, so you can see the handle is one piece, and the bushings, so you can see the handle play. It's got some, but it's not bad, and no blade tap. So this one's just a good knife. This one's also an M390 blade, so great blade, great knife. It would be a very good beater knife, but I think the blade is a bit delicate. You can see you've got a really sharp point up there, which could be an issue if you drop it, or if you're like under heavy use. You can see the blade on this one's dirty because I do carry this one and use it as a knife a lot. But yeah, I'll give you a sound test. You can see this one sounds pretty good. You got that ring from the handles, and with the tank pins, it's a bit quieter, but still sounds pretty good. So next up, I've got my Beagle Blades knife. This is also one of their early ones. You can see the hardware isn't much, but the blade on this, I really love the blade grind on this. It's like some new edge kukri grind. So definitely one of my favorite blade shapes. This one's also your titanium handles, Zen pins. This one runs on bushings, but I've got aftermarket bushings on here that I just haven't really tuned down yet. So you can see there's a decent amount of blade play here and a lot of handle tap. But this is a 154 cm steel blade, so it's a pretty hard steel, and I flip this thing all the time. It's definitely my favorite fast flipper, and it doesn't have any marks on the blade or anything from it, so it's pretty good. But yeah, this one, great flipper of a knife, but with the 154 cm steel and how elegant that blade grind is, not really something I'm going to carry. Give y'all a little sound test. Sounds pretty good with the Zen pins and everything, but with that blade tap kind of takes away from it a little bit. But great knife, definitely my favorite fast flip. Now lastly, we've got the Hom Basilisk Elite. Look at that. This is definitely, I think, the coolest knife I've got. So this one, you've got your titanium handles with the PVD coating. So they actually feel kind of rubbery to the touch, and you get a lot of grip out of those. And the other thing is with the gold blade and all the gold hardware, those are titanium nitride coating or tin coating. And that is literally even all the little screws and the pivots and the spacers. Just a really good looking knife. Now this one is an S35 VN steel blade, which is another amazing steel, probably my favorite non-super steel, if you could consider it that, but favorite standard steel. Great knife, although don't carry this one a lot because of a few things. One, these tips are notorious for breaking. I mean, you can see mine's tipped a little bit, but it's not like totally gone yet. But just such a cool looking knife. You've got your bushings, and you can see barely any blade play. And again, these handles are cranked as tight as they can go. So amazing. This is definitely like, I say this with most of my knives, but this one is one of my favorite knives. Definitely my favorite looking. And give you all a little sound test. It's pretty quiet with the PVD coating. They do a bunch of versions of these. I've had the all titanium version too, and that one was a bit louder, but I think the looks on this knife are loud enough for what it needs to do. So if you want to know more about a knife individually, leave me a comment about it, because I do plan on making videos of some of these knives individually. Now, one of the things I didn't talk about in this video was pricing and where to buy these knives. And that is because all of these knives, as far as I know, are out of production or discontinued. So the only way you're going to find any of these knives on this table is by going onto a forum like Jersey Devil and finding a used one, which is not the most reliable way to quote pricing sometimes. So I will talk about that more in each of these knives individual videos. But until then, thanks for watching.